Hi, welcome back to the Model Train Outsider, episode 10. And I am Anthony Dodge, and I'm the younger, thinner, healthier, cuter, and dare I say, jollier version of me. What? Jollier? Where do you get that? Nobody likes Christmas more than me. Except me. How so? Because I'm the carefree, artsier version of you. I'm your artistic side, your dreamer side. You're the more uptight, the more serious, the more analytical side of us. And speaking of which, what are you analyzing today? Well, kind of related to Christmas today. Today what I'd like to talk about is, briefly, it being Christmas time. A lot of kids might be getting model train sets for Christmas. Obviously, we adults that are into the hobby are expecting lots of cool Christmas train stuff. But in a more serious sense, see, told you. Oh, stop. I just want to briefly talk about something I've mentioned in a couple of the videos, which is how do you get a new generation of kids into the hobby? In an article from Time Magazine in 2017, which talked about the state of the hobby and its massive decline, they said the average age of a model train hobbyist in the United States is in the early 50s. In a German TV show a couple of years ago on a network called Das Erste, talking about model trains, they said the average age of a hobbyist in Germany is early mid-40s. In England, I haven't got stats, but I'll bet it's probably close to the German age, early to mid-40s. But in America, it's at least 10 years older and aging. Why? Well, again, money, space aside, I think the biggest factor in the United States is simply we're not exposed to it. No kid in America grows up exposed to trains. They don't ride them for holidays. They don't ride them to school or back. They don't ride them for field trips from school. They're not exposed to them. The only exposure American kids get to the train industry is if it's a family connection. They've got family members that worked in the train industry, or they have family members that are heavily into the model train hobby who themselves were probably somehow connected to the train industry. Day-to-day American kids, there's no exposure to trains, so they don't see, like you do in Germany or England, the cool modern trains. They don't have a history of the trains to go by. You know, they're not sharing stories of their father saying, oh, when we were kids and rode trains. And there's none of that in America. That's really the big issue, is how do you expose American kids to train? Recently in England, they had a TV show, The Great Model Railway Challenge. And the two big model train conventions, since that show aired, people who were there mentioned bigger crowds, many more young kids. And sales have actually gone up in England in the model train hobbies just in the month and a half since that TV show aired, and it's being renewed for a second season. But part of that is because these kids do know trains. They see them in their towns. They have stations. They ride them. They ride the subways and the trains to parts of England. Plus, they have heritage lines where people can go ride the old steam locomotives. There is much more exposure, day in and day out, and thus trains are there. So to have a model train has a little bit stronger connection. Then you can deal with the money and the space issues, but at least they have that. In Germany, the same thing. Märklin just released about 6 weeks ago their biggest Christmas campaign and model train campaign in years. And it was called Gleis 1, simply track 1, line 1. But I'll put a link to the commercial down below. It doesn't speak German. It speaks one language, the language of model trains. And anybody who watches this video is hit by it if you are into model trains or have the family that's into trains. It is an exquisite commercial. Watch it. Because I don't care if you're from England, the United States, anywhere. It's an amazing commercial. And Märklin realizes they're going after the new generation, getting kids into trains. But again, in Germany, they're exposed to trains. They see them day in and day out in their daily life. So there is a connection to trains. So how do we do it in America? What can we do? I don't know that there's an answer. How do we expose kids to train? I don't know if a show like Great Model Railway Challenge could work in America. I'd like to see it tried. We tend to copy a lot of British and German shows, so let's copy that one. Let's see if it works. I'm a teacher. 32 years I've been a classroom teacher. In the last few years, I have taken 150 students to Germany, and we ride the trains, and the kids like the train system. And I have trained in my classroom for my students to see. And yes, they do have, like a seed is planted. You try to get them. In fact, just the other day, my German club, a group of my students, we go caroling every year through the neighborhood. And we have a Christmas party for the students here at my house. And I let them run my trains while they're down here. Yes, a seed gets planted, but nothing nourishes it. Once they go home, it's not there. I have one student that is into model trains. I would really like to get model trains, and you try to encourage that, you get that. But because there's no exposure, there's no day-to-day connection between the young person and the train, it's a lot harder. And we can argue that, well, the video games they play, there's no connection. But that's fantasy world, and we could spend 20, 30 days talking about the psychology involved there. But in America, one of the reasons it is definitely struggling is simply there's no day-to-day exposure of trains. Many kids still get a model train kit for Christmas, and it goes away, and they go to the Transformers and the Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they move into the video games and cars. And you'd think with America's love of cars, slot cars would be a huge. No, radio control is a big hobby in America. Radio controlled cars. It's one car, they can take it anywhere and mess with it, and it's huge in America. And along with the drone hobby is really catching on with young people. But no day-to-day exposure with kids. And you try. You give kids, like I give my students, an opportunity. Here's a train. Look at it. Because when you look at a train in 3D, there's something special about it. You look at this locomotive. This is my Austrian railjet. It's gorgeous. You look at it, the coloring, holding it. There is something wonderful about having something truly 3D. No video game, nothing can beat actual 3D, feeling the weight of it, looking at the mechanics, and watching it run on a track. Nothing can beat this. But how do you do this? In England, we hear them talk about the cost. It's very expensive for kids to get into the hobby. And maybe it is, but not in America. You can go buy a basic HO set for under $50 with trains and cars. Yes, it's plastic, but it's a start. And you can see if you can plant that seed. But what we really need in America What we truly need in America is the kids need to have an exposure to trains, passenger trains especially. Not just some picture in their history book about that era of American history. They need to touch it and see it in real life, because then they want to recreate it. So the great issue in America, because the hobby is not dead, far from it. There are hundreds of thousands of people who do the hobby. I'm an outsider because I do modern European trains, and the people who model trains in America tend to do golden age. Because there is no current age. There is no modern image. Yes, as I've talked about in other videos, we have Amtrak, we have other things, but 95% of American young people have no exposure to trains. And if they don't have an exposure, they're much less likely to want to recreate that world in miniature in their own lives. This is what happened for me. I go to Germany, I see the amazing mass rail transport system. I'm hooked. It's awesome. I ride the trains. I love riding the trains. That seed was not really planted as a kid. As I said in other videos, I found my toy train set boring. It had no connection to me. Going to Germany, riding the trains, then it had a connection. And then I wanted to recreate it. So that is really the big issue in America. That's why the average age is higher in America. Our younger generations get exposed to it much less. They get exposed to it through their parents or family members that have trains. So if you're an American and you're into trains, make sure you let your kids experience it. Take them on train rides. Take them on some of the classic train rides, or get them on an Amtrak ride. Get them exposed. In England, you guys have a huge seed planted with that Great Model Railway Challenge show. You saw already at the Worley and other model train shows, you've seen the rise in interest and popularity. Water that seed. Everybody that's into model trains, break the cliques, come out of the clubs, bring kids in, have a kids' day if you have a club, bring the kids in. Even though they do get exposed to it, all you're doing is watering that seed. Bring the kids in, let them touch, let them play. Get your cheaper locomotive out there and let them run and play with it. And if they break a $25 locomotive, let them break it. Let the kids touch and experience, because that's the way you get them in. They have a positive relationship, and then somewhere down the line, they'll try to figure a way. You see your friends on YouTube that are into trains. You see the videos, you see them. Sam runs it in an upstairs loft on the floor, no carpeting. IC82 Will, he ran it in a conservatory. He's not a kid, he's in his 30s. All of us that are building layouts, or all of you that got them in the lofts, or you have clubs, that's great. But a kid walks in and sees the finished picture and doesn't understand how to get there. Get them in. Let them appreciate the touch, the feel, the mechanics, the electronics, the weight. Let them experience it. In America, we have to work a lot harder if we want this hobby to grow, much less avoid death. It'll never die. But if we want to see it expand again, we've got to get off our high horses. We've got to get our noses out of the air. The snobbery that you can run across, and believe me, I ran into a lot of it when I started modeling. The people that had no patience for beginners. Oh, you don't know what you're doing. Just Google it. Well, get that attitude out of your head. Treat every person in the hobby as the next big member, as the one guy who might explode it among everybody else. and watch it grow. You want to get the kids in, get them touching, feeling, playing with it without discouragement. Show them that there's a million ways they can do it, and keep their interest. Don't sit there and moan about price and cost. There are cheap ways to do it. Just get the kids into the hobby. Expose them to it and do everything you can to show the positive sides of it. Not the building, not the construction, just the trains. That's why you're into the hobby, right? You love the trains. If a kid loves trains, he may just want to grow into the hobby as well. All right, so that was episode 10. I want to wish everybody out there to whom it applies a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year. Whatever you're celebrating, enjoy it. If you don't celebrate anything this time of year, just enjoy people enjoying it. There's lines, there's crowds, there's hustle and bustle, but so what? You knew that going in. Have a very, very Merry Christmas from me, my other me, and the entire Dodge family to all of you. And we'll see you for the next episode.